What's up guys, Josh here and you're watching Chimp Skills, and today we're going to talk about your personal presence. So I recently did a course that focused on the personal presence that you bring to a one-on-one scenario, that you bring when you're presenting to a group, basically the way you hold yourself and the way that others perceive you. So some of the key takeaway points were certain elements that we can adjust to improve the way that we present to others. Like I mentioned, if it's on a one-on-one setting or if it's presenting to a larger group. Now, when you think about personal presence, you might be thinking, well, what exactly is that? Think about someone who, when they walk into a room, everyone sort of turns their head and notices that person. It may be an athlete, a famous actor, or an academic, someone that you respect, for the value that they've brought to a specific field. We can all think about someone who has that, it factor, and when they do walk in, people stand and take notice. So a lot of the time it can come down to that presence they bring. So the context that we were using it was in a professional setting, so they were talking about like hallway presence. When you walk down the corridors, in your office, do people like superior people look at you and think, hey, that's someone who's promotable. So that's all good and well, but it carries over to a lot of other different aspects of our life. So when we were doing the actual course, we were presenting to a crowd, and the person who was running the course would basically critique and look out for certain areas that you could improve on the way that you're presenting. So we all have certain little tics that we do, the way that we present, we might be rocking, all these little things. And basically they were going through bit by bit and critiquing you and sort of making you into the best version of yourself. So I'm going to run through some of the key points that I took away, and things that you can bring into a practical setting, like whether it is, maybe going for an interview at work, or presenting to a group of peers, or just carrying that power in that one-on-one scenario, if you're asking for a raise, or any of these kind of different things that you may come across that can help you put your best foot forward. So the first thing was that we covered off, because we were doing it on a stage, it was basically our entry. So how are we walking? And so someone who has strong presence will walk quite slowly but with purpose. It's going to be quite deliberate, and they're going to look relaxed. You don't want to be sort of shuffling or pacing too quickly where people think you're in a rush. You're moving at your own pace. So the walk, or the way that you enter, is very important. The second one was body posture. So we want to make sure that we're not sort of hunched over and heads forward and we sort of look like we haven't got much energy. We want to make sure we're nice and upright, shoulders are back, and that we're quite open with our hands, with our body language. We don't want to be sort of crossing our arms and sort of leaning back or anything like that, giving people the wrong signals that we don't want to engage with them. The third thing was having a clear voice. So we also, we want to speak clearly, and we want to speak not too quickly, but not too slowly. So whatever is your natural sort of cadence for your speech. But probably the key thing to look out for is that you don't have inflections at the end of your sentences. So when we do this, it sounds like we're trying to seek approval from the audience, where we want to be talking like what we have to say is of value and we're not questioning ourselves. So that might be like, how is everyone feeling today? When people are like, I'm Ron Burgundy, the famous one from Anchorman, where we turn a statement into a question. So have a clear voice with a nice sort of succinct tone that doesn't waver up in pitch at the end of the sentences, avoiding those inflections. The fourth one was hand gestures. So when we use our hands, don't be afraid to sort of fill up the space. You can be big with your hands, but just be deliberate with what you're doing with them. The biggest problem that we found in our sort of group was for guys, their hands are in the pocket or they're on the hips, and we start to look a bit standoffish or just uncomfortable. So if you're not using your hands, just leave them rested by the side around your hips and just let them sort of dangle there nice and loose. It may feel uncomfortable for a little bit, but that's just your body getting used to sort of a new positioning, but believe me, it will be for the better. The amount of guys that, could not keep their sort of hands just out resting, it just naturally goes straight to the pockets, especially when they start to get nervous. The fifth one was having a stable head. So if we are talking and our head's bobbling around like this, you're going to lose someone straight away. So you want to make sure that the head's stable, it's not wobbling around, we're not sort of gazing all over the shop, we're got our eye contact and we're engaged with the person, but the head's stable. And the last one was owning the space. So especially if you're on stage and you are presenting, don't be afraid to walk around and utilize that space. Generally, someone who is showing that higher level of presence, they're commanding the audience, they're commanding sort of, their attention. They're going to fill that space and they're going to own it. And there's a sort of deeper psychological component to that, and that is that, if you are presenting to a group and you have purpose, but thinking internally in your mind as well as that, hey, I've actually got some really good information I'd like to share with the group. And don't be thinking like, well, how will I be perceived? I wonder what they'll think. What if they don't like it? All those sort of negative thoughts when you go to present are going to reflect in your body language. So it's important to have that mind right before you go out. It's like, hey, I'm presenting something of really high value. People are going to get something from it. And I don't give a fuck what the audience thinks. I'm going to own this shit, and then I'm going to walk out, present, and that'll be that. If you can change that aspect internally, it will make a huge difference in the way that you actually present yourself. So own that space physically, and then your headspace as well is probably a really big one. So just to run off those things, guys, the way you walk and enter a room, the way you hold yourself with your body posture, a clear voice with no inflections at the end. Make sure, you're using sort of good, strong hand gestures, and if you're not using your hands, they're resting by your sides. Keep your head stable, and last but not least, own the space. So look, guys, I hope that helps. If you're going for an interview, or if you're presenting to a group of peers, any of these kinds of things, you want to make sure that you can have the strongest presence that you can. That way, when you're speaking to a group, you're sending off all the right signals, body language wise, verbally. So you actually can get their attention and engage with them where they are able to sort of get whatever quality information you're trying to get across to them. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a like, give it a share, and until next time, peace.